some of the customers who come in at night don't blink right. I started noticing it a few weeks ago. Their eyes close sideways, like a reptile instead of top to bottom. It only happens for a split second, and only when they think no one's looking. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. At first I thought I was hallucinating from the stress of working nights during polar night. But then my coworker Jessie mentioned she'd seen the same thing, and we started keeping track. At least a dozen customers per night have the sideways blink. They're always alone. They always pay an exact change, and they never buy anything that needs to be cooked. Last night, one of them came through my line buying raw meat. Just raw meat. 30 pounds of ground beef, 20 packages of chicken breasts, a whole rack of ribs. When I commented that it was a lot of meat, she smiled, and her smile was too wide, stretching past where a normal human smile should end. "It's for my family," she said in a voice that sounded like it was being played through a speaker, like she was imitating how a human talks, but not quite getting it right. We eat together. All of us. We become together. I bagged the meat, and when I handed it to her, I noticed her skin. It was moving, shifting, like there was something underneath trying to push through. And when she walked away, I realized she didn't walk like a person. She glided, her feet not quite touching the ground, her joints bending in ways that looked almost right, but weren't quite human. My name is Dakota Reyes, and I've been working night shift at the Bethel Walmart for 8 months now. Moved up here from Anchorage after my divorce, thinking the isolation would help me figure things out. The Walmart here sits on Chief Eddie Hoffman Highway, the only major road in town, serving the 15 surrounding Yupik villages. During polar night, late November through January, we're one of the few places open past 8 p.m. The darkness lasts 22 hours a day out here. Jessie Tunichuk, my co-worker, is Yupik, grew up in Akiak Downriver. She's the one who found the list of rules in the break room filing cabinet 2 weeks ago, tucked behind old OSHA posters and outdated employee handbooks. The paper was yellowed, edges crisp with age, typed on what looked like a typewriter from the 80s. No signature, no date, just 5 rules in faded ink. Night managers kept this hidden for 30 years, Jessie said, her voice flat. My cousin's grandmother worked here when this place opened in 1995. She quit after 6 months. Never said why. I should have quit then too. But I needed the job. The pay differential for night shift covered my rent at the AEC Value Center apartments, so I read the rules, memorized them, and clocked in at 11 p.m. like always. That was a mistake. Jessie handed me the laminated copy she'd made during her lunch break. The rules were simple. Too simple. Bethel Walmart night shift. Protocols. Between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., do not make direct eye contact with any customer who enters alone and purchases only raw protein products. Scan their items, accept payment, provide receipt. Nothing more. If you hear scratching from inside the walk-in freezer, prop the door open with the yellow safety wedge. Leave it open until the scratching stops. Do not investigate the source. Customers who speak in layered voices, multiple tones at once, are to be treated with standard courtesy. Do not ask them to repeat themselves. Do not comment on their speech patterns. After 2 a.m., check the security monitor every 30 minutes. If you see yourself on camera but you're not in that location, immediately go to the break room and remain there for 10 minutes. Do not look at the monitors during this time. If a customer asks you, "Are you like us?" answer only, "I'm still learning." Do not elaborate. Do not ask what they mean. That's it? I turned the paper over. Blank. That's it. Jessie was already tying her black hair back, getting ready for our shift. My grandmother's friend who worked here in the 90s? She broke Rule 4, saw herself stocking shelves in aisle 7 while she was up front, doing returns. She went to investigate instead of going to the break room. Jessie's face was stone. They found her 3 days later out by the Kuskokwim River. Hypothermia, they said. But she was found in July. The Kuskokwim runs right through Bethel, brown and sluggish, carrying silt from the interior. In summer, it's 60 degrees, warm enough for king salmon runs. How do you die of hypothermia in July? I asked. Jessie looked at me. You don't. The first hour of our shift was normal. A pilot from Hageland Aviation buying coffee and beef jerky. A nurse from the Yukon Kuskokwim Health Corporation picking up prescriptions. 3 teenagers from the high school buying energy drinks and chips, laughing about something on someone's phone. At 12:47 a.m., the door chimed. Woman, mid-30s maybe, wearing a purple kuspuk, traditional Yupik parka. But something about how she wore it seemed wrong, like someone had explained what clothing was, but never actually seen it worn. She moved through the aisles without a cart, selecting items and cradling them in her arms. Raw hamburger, chicken thighs, pork chops, salmon steaks from the seafood case. When she reached my register, I kept my eyes on the scanner. Rule 1. No eye contact. The meat was cold against my hands, packaging slick with condensation. Hunting's been difficult, she said, and her voice had texture to it, like 2 people speaking half a second apart, their words overlapping. Rule 3. Don't comment on the layered speech. The animals know we're different now. They run before we get close. I scanned, beeped, scanned, beeped. So we adapt. We learn your ways. The layered voice again, 1 tone younger, 1 older, weaving together. Your stores, your money, your food. Total came to $67.43. She counted out exact change from a leather pouch, coins clinking onto the counter. Old quarters, some from the 70s, Kennedy profiles worn smooth. I bagged the meat, handed her the receipt. She took it, and I saw her fingers. Too many knuckles, each joint bending just slightly wrong, like they'd been put together by someone who'd only seen hands in photographs. Thank you, she said, both voices perfectly synchronized this time. She turned and walked toward the door, and I noticed her feet never quite touched the ground, hovering maybe an inch above the tile, leaving no footprints in the slush someone had tracked in earlier. The door chimed. She was gone. Jessie appeared from the stockroom, carrying a box of pilot bread crackers. First one tonight? Yeah. Gets easier. She started restocking the end cap. You stop noticing after a while. Your brain kind of adjusts. From somewhere deep in the store, metal scraped against metal. Long, sustained. Coming from the back. The freezer. Jessie heard it too. She set down the crackers. Grab the yellow wedge from the custodian closet. I'll handle register. The scratching continued, rhythmic now, like fingernails dragging across steel. Or claws. Rule 2. Prop the door open. Don't investigate. I found the wedge where she said it'd be. Rubber worn smooth from repeated use. The walk-in freezer sat in the back corner, near receiving, behind the dairy coolers. The scratching grew louder as I approached, accompanied by something else. A wet, clicking sound, like joints popping. My hands were shaking when I pulled the heavy door open. The scratching stopped immediately. I wedged the door, making sure it couldn't close, and stepped back quickly. For 10 seconds, nothing. Then something moved in the dark interior. A shape, tall, too tall for the 7-foot ceiling, its spine curved to fit the space. I didn't wait. I turned and walked back to the front, my pulse loud in my ears, refusing to run even though every nerve was screaming at me to sprint. When I reached the registers, Jessie was already pouring 2 cups of coffee from the pot she kept brewing all night. "How long?" I asked. She checked her watch. "Usually about 20 minutes, sometimes an hour." We drank our coffee and waited for the scratching to stop. The scratching stopped at 1:34 a.m. Jessie went back and retrieved the yellow wedge, closing the freezer door without looking inside. When she returned, her face was pale. "Worse tonight," she said, pouring herself more coffee. "What do you mean worse?" She didn't answer, just shook her head and went to straighten the magazine rack near the entrance. At 1:58 a.m., I remembered Rule 4. Check the security monitors every 30 minutes after 2 a.m. I pulled up the feed on the register computer. 12 cameras covering the store. Produce section, pharmacy, electronics, sporting goods, the back hallways. Nothing unusual. Empty aisles. Jessie restocking batteries in aisle 3. Me standing at register 2. Wait. I looked at the timestamp on the camera labeled Register 2. There I was, scanning items for a customer I couldn't quite make out, their form blurred and static-filled. But I was standing at Register 2 right now, watching the monitor. No customer in front of me. Rule 4. Go to the break room. Stay for 10 minutes. Don't look at the monitors. I walked quickly toward the back, past the pharmacy counter, through the swinging doors marked Employees Only. The break room was small, round table, microwave that barely worked, a mini fridge someone had covered with Yupik language learning magnets. I sat down and stared at the clock on the wall. 2:01 a.m. The minute hand moved so slowly it seemed broken. Through the door I heard the register chime. Someone scanning items. But Jessie was in aisle 3. I'd just seen her there on the cameras. So who was at my register? Don't think about it. Just wait. 2:03 a.m. The fluorescent bulb above me buzzed. No, not buzzed. Hummed. A single sustained note that made my teeth ache. I focused on the Yupik magnets instead. Piura, walk, Neka, food, Elpanek, weather. 2:06 a.m. Footsteps in the hallway outside, soft shuffling. Then they stopped right outside the break room door. I could see a shadow underneath, blocking the light from the hallway. 2 feet, standing there. I kept my eyes on the clock. 2:09 a.m. The shadow moved away. The footsteps retreated. 2:11 a.m. I left the break room and returned to the front. Jessie was back at the registers looking rattled. On my counter sat a receipt I hadn't printed. $43.67. All raw meat. Paid in exact change. "Did you see?" I started. "No," Jessie cut me off. "And neither did you. That's how this works. You follow the rules, you don't ask questions, you survive until dawn." A family came in around 2:30 a.m. Father, mother, 2 kids. The children looked normal enough, arguing about which cereal to get, but the parents moved in perfect synchronization, stepping with the same foot, turning their heads at the same angle, reaching for items at the exact same moment. Their expressions were focused, like they were concentrating hard on appearing casual. The mother selected bread, the father picked up peanut butter, the kids grabbed Fruit Loops and Pop-Tarts, normal grocery items, learning to blend in. When they reached my register, the father smiled, and I saw his teeth were filed down smooth, no canines, no molars, just flat rectangles like he'd sanded them himself to look more human. "Good evening," he said. Single voice this time. They were getting better. I scanned their items. The bread was warm, like it had been sitting in a hot car. The peanut butter jar felt wrong. Too light, like it was empty. Just a prop. "Your children are beautiful," Jessie said from register 3, and I wanted to kick her. "Don't engage." That wasn't in the rules, but it felt like it should be. The mother's head snapped toward Jessie, neck rotating too far, almost 180 degrees before correcting itself. "Thank you." We made them ourselves, from memory, of what children should look like. The temperature in the store dropped. I could see my breath. The father paid with a credit card. It went through. Name on the receipt: Thompson Family Unit. Not Thompson Family. Not the Thompsons. Thompson Family Unit. They left with their groceries, the children walking in perfect lockstep with each other, their argument about cereal forgotten, or perhaps never real to begin with. "Jesus Christ," I whispered when they were gone. "They're trying," Jessie said quietly. "Every night they come in, they're a little more convincing, learning from us, watching how real families interact. My grandmother used to say there were stories, old stories, about the Ursenrot, the little people who live in the wilderness. They could look like anyone, like anything, but they weren't evil, just different, trying to survive in a world that was forgetting them. These aren't little people, Jessie. I know what they are." She turned to face me, and her eyes were wet. "They're running out of space. The tundra's melting. The permafrost is disappearing. Where do you think they're supposed to go?" Before I could respond, the door chimed again. Man. 30s. Wearing a Carhartt jacket and extra tough boots. Standard gear for Bethel winters. He walked with purpose to the electronics section, selected a prepaid phone, then came to my register. He set the phone down, looked directly at me. "Are you like us?" he asked. "Rule 5. Answer only, 'I'm still learning.' Don't elaborate. 'I'm still learning.'" He stared at me for a long moment. His eyes were brown, normal, but behind them I could see something else looking out. Something ancient and confused and desperate. "Good," he said. "We need teachers. The transition is hard. We forget how to be human, how to hold a conversation, how to show emotions correctly." He paused. "Do you remember when you changed? When you stopped being what you were and became what you are now? Don't elaborate. Don't ask what they mean." I scanned the phone. $34.99. He paid in cash. Clean bills, sequential serial numbers, like they'd just been printed. "Thank you for your service," he said, and left. Jessie and I stood in silence for several minutes after he was gone. "I need to know," I said finally. "What happens if I break the rules?" "Really?" She pulled out her phone, opened Facebook, navigated to a memorial page. A woman's face filled the screen. Young, smiling, U-Peak features. My grandmother's friend, Catherine Ayunarak. They found her by the river in July 1996. Froze solid. Medical examiner said it was like she'd been in a deep freeze for hours, but she'd only been missing for 20 minutes. She broke Rule 4. Went looking for herself instead of waiting in the break room. I looked at the photo. Catherine wore a Walmart vest in the picture. "What did she find?" I asked. "Herself," Jessie said. "Or what she would become. What she could become." And it scared her so badly, she ran out into the summer night and died of cold that didn't exist. She pocketed the phone. "The rules aren't just about surviving them, Dakota. They're about surviving yourself." At 3:47 a.m., 3 more customers came through, all buying raw meat, all paying an exact change, all blinking sideways when they thought we weren't watching. I followed the rules, scanned their items, took their money, said nothing. But I couldn't stop thinking about what the man in the Carhartt jacket had asked. "Do you remember when you changed?" I didn't, but the question made something in my chest tighten, like a knot pulling itself closed. If you like the stories, please hype the videos from a button like this just above the comment section. It helps the videos to get more reach and perform well. It would take just a few seconds and cost nothing, but would help the channel grow even faster. Thank you. At 4:15 a.m., Jessie asked me to help her inventory the walk-in cooler, not the freezer, the refrigerated section where we kept dairy and produce. I'd been avoiding the back of the store since the scratching incident, but she needed a second person to verify counts for the morning shift report. The cooler was 40 degrees, my breath visible but not painful. Jessie checked off items on her clipboard while I counted gallons of milk. That's when I noticed the wall. The back panel, near the floor, had changed. Where there should have been smooth metal, the surface now looked organic, textured like skin, moving slightly with each breath I took, as if the wall was breathing too. "Don't touch it," Jessie said without looking up from her clipboard. "It's been doing that for 3 years. Maintenance won't come back here anymore." "What is it?" The building remembering what was here before. She marked something off her list. This whole area used to be tundra, nesting grounds. Before the store, before the town, really. Some things don't forget. They just wait underneath. I stepped back from the wall. The texture pulsed once, then settled back into something resembling metal. Almost. We finished the inventory and returned to the front. Through the windows, Bethel was completely dark except for scattered porch lights and the glow from the hospital across Chief Eddie Hoffman Highway. The night felt heavier than usual, pressing against the glass. A woman entered at 4:33 a.m. She wore a blue Columbia jacket and carried a purse that looked expensive, out of place in Bethel where most people wore practical gear from the local AC store. Her makeup was perfect, too perfect, like a mannequin's, each feature highlighted and contoured with the precision of someone who'd studied human faces in magazines, but never wore makeup themselves. She selected a cart and began shopping. Normal enough. Cereal, orange juice, a bag of apples. Then she reached the meat section. I watched on the security monitor as she stood in front of the beef case for 3 full minutes, not moving, not blinking, just standing. Then she opened the case and removed every package of ground beef, 27 packages, and placed them carefully in her cart, arranging them in a spiral pattern that made my eyes hurt to look at. She came to my register. The meat was freezing cold through the packaging, so cold it burned my fingers when I scanned it. Up close, I could see her skin had a waxy quality, like it had been molded rather than grown. Big family dinner? I tried to sound casual. Her head tilted. The movement was smooth but wrong, like a camera panning on a tripod. Yes, family. We are having a gathering to practice being together in one space without revealing ourselves. She smiled, and I saw that her teeth were all exactly the same size, same shape, perfectly white. No variation, like dentures, but organic. It is difficult. The younger ones forget to breathe regularly. They hold their breath for too long, and people notice. I scanned the meat, didn't make eye contact. "You do it well," she continued, breathing, blinking. The small movements that make you seem alive. "How long did it take you to learn?" My hands stopped moving. Rule 5 echoed in my head, but she hadn't asked the trigger question. This was different. "I don't know what you mean," I said, She studied me like a specimen. Perhaps you learned so young you don't remember the lessons. That's good. That's integration. That's what we're trying to achieve. Total came to $186.73. She paid with a $100 bill and exact change for the rest. The coins were cold enough to leave frost marks on the counter. After she left, Jessie appeared at my elbow. She thinks you're one of them. I know. Are you? Jessie's voice was careful, neutral. What? No, I stopped, looked at her. Why would you even ask that? She studied my face for a long moment. You moved here 8 months ago, from Anchorage. But when you filled out your application, you couldn't remember your childhood address. You put various locations for schools, no emergency contact, no family at all. I had a rough childhood. Foster care, that's not. And you never get cold. She gestured at the store. It's 58 degrees in here because corporate refuses to pay for proper heating. I wear 3 layers. You wear short sleeves. I looked down at my arms. She was right. I hadn't even noticed. The skin was smooth. No goosebumps. The cold didn't bother me at all. That doesn't mean anything, I said, but my voice sounded hollow. Before Jessie could respond, the door chimed. A man entered, and I recognized him immediately. Ben Tuluk, a regular who worked at the BIA building and came in every Friday night for coffee and snacks before his weekend shift. He was human, normal. I'd had conversations with him about fishing on the Kuskokwin, about the weather, about his daughter's basketball team. But tonight Ben moved differently. His walk was stiff, each step placed carefully, like he was learning to use legs for the first time. He walked past us to the beverage aisle, selected a gallon of milk, then stood in front of the refrigerator case, staring at the yogurt section for 2 full minutes. When he finally selected a container, he brought it to the register upside down. "Evening, Ben," Jessie said carefully. He looked at her, blinked sideways. "Good. Evening. Jessie, I am purchasing dairy products." The voice was wrong. Each word separated, like he was reading them off a card. Jessie scanned his items slowly. "How's Emma's basketball season going?" Ben's face went blank, completely empty, like someone had wiped away his personality. Then, slowly, expressions flickered across his features. Confusion, happiness, concern, anger, cycling through emotions like he was trying to remember which one was appropriate. Finally, he settled on something resembling a smile. "Basketball. Yes. Emma plays. She scores. Points. The team is winning. Games." He paid an exact change. Coins from the 80s and 90s, Kennedy profiles worn smooth. After he left, Jessie pulled out her phone and dialed. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. "Hi, is Ben there?" Pause. "Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. Just had a question about the borough meeting next week. I'll catch him Monday." She hung up, looked at me. "He's home. Been there all night. His wife says he's been sick with the flu for 3 days." "Then who? They're getting better at it." Jessie's voice shook. "That's what scares me. Every night they come in, they're more convincing. Learning our names, our routines, our families. How long before we can't tell the difference?" I wanted to argue, to say something reassuring, but I kept thinking about what the woman in the blue Columbia jacket had said. How long did it take you to learn? At 5 a.m., I checked the security monitors again. The timestamp read 5:02 a.m. but my watch said 5:00, 2 minutes off. I scanned through the camera feeds and saw myself stocking shelves in aisle 12, sporting goods. But I was standing at the register, watching the monitor. Rule 4, break room, 10 minutes. I walked to the back, my legs moving automatically, my mind trying to process everything. The break room was the same. Round table, broken microwave, Yupik language magnets. I sat down and pulled out my phone. I searched for my own name, Dakota Reyes. Anchorage. The results were strange. There was a Dakota Reyes who'd worked at a coffee shop in Anchorage 2 years ago. Reviews mentioned her by name. Friendly barista. Always smiling. But the photo on the staff page was blurry, face obscured by steam from an espresso machine. I searched deeper, found a Facebook profile. Last post was from 18 months ago, a photo of mountains. Caption, going camping in Chugach State Park. Back in a week. No posts after that. No comments. The account went silent. I clicked through the photos, saw myself, or someone who looked like me, at various Anchorage locations. The Moose's Tooth Pub, Flat Top Mountain, the Alaska Native Heritage Center. But in every single photo, my face was turned away, or blurred, or partially obscured. Never a clear shot. My hands were shaking. I put the phone down. The clock read 5:06 a.m. 4 more minutes. I tried to remember my childhood, before foster care, before the system. There should be something. The first memory, a house, a parent's face. But when I reached back, there was nothing. Just static. Like someone had recorded over old footage, leaving only faint impressions of what used to be there. What had that man in the Carhartt jacket asked? Do you remember when you changed? 5:10 a.m. I left the break room and returned to the front. On my register was another receipt. $56.34. Raw chicken and beef. Paid in exact change. Jessie was restocking cigarettes behind the counter, her movements careful and precise. What did you see? She asked without turning around. Myself. In sporting goods. And I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the truth was settling in my chest like ice, and I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. Not sunrise. We were still weeks away from seeing the sun. But the deep black was fading to dark blue, the first hint that dawn was approaching. Just one more hour until the end of shift. Just one more hour until I could go home and pretend everything was normal. But I wasn't sure what normal meant anymore. At 5:23 a.m., a child came through the automatic doors alone. She looked maybe 7 years old, wearing a pink parka that was too large for her frame and white bunny boots that squeaked against the tile. Her hair was dark, pulled into 2 braids, and her face had the round features common among Yupik children. She walked directly to the toy aisle without looking around, without the wandering curiosity actual children have. Jessie tensed beside me. Where are her parents? We watched the security monitor as the child stood in front of the Barbie section, head tilted at an angle that made my neck hurt just looking at it. She reached out and touched each box, one at a time, pressing her palm flat against the plastic like she was reading them through touch. After 5 minutes, she selected one, a basic Barbie in a blue dress, and brought it to my register. "Hi there," I said, trying to sound friendly. "Is your mom or dad here?" The child looked up at me. Her eyes were brown and normal, but they didn't move the way eyes should. They tracked across my face in a grid pattern, left to right, top to bottom, like a photocopier scanning a document. "I don't have those," she said. Her voice was high and childlike, but it had an echo quality. like it was bouncing off walls that weren't there. I have a collective. We share resources and knowledge. This doll is for study purposes. To understand play behavior. My finger hovered over the scanner. How old are you? 47 days. She blinked sideways. In this configuration. Before, I was part of something else. Something that lived in the ground. But the ground got too warm, so we had to become new things. I scanned the Barbie. $12.99. She pulled out a small change purse, unzipped it, and poured coins onto the counter. They were all pennies. Every single one from 1959, copper and worn. 299 of them. She'd counted exact change. "Thank you for your transaction," the child said. She picked up the Barbie, tucked it under her arm like a log instead of cradling it, and walked toward the exit. At the door, she stopped and turned back. "You smell different from the others, like you've been one of us longer. Long enough that you almost believe you're human." Then she was gone, disappearing into the dark morning. Jesse helped me scoop the pennies into the register drawer. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. "I need to tell you something," Jesse finally said. She wasn't looking at me, focused instead on organizing bills in the cash drawer. "About why I really brought you here." "To night shift." "What do you mean?" She closed the drawer, hard enough that it rang. "You applied for day shift. Your whole application was for day shift, but I specifically requested you be moved to nights. I told the manager you had availability issues, that you needed the differential pay. I lied. Why? Because I needed to know." She turned to face me now, and her eyes were red. 3 months ago, my little brother Paul went camping up past Quethluk. He was 19, experienced, knew the land. He went out for a week and came back. Different. Talked differently. Moved differently. Didn't remember our grandmother's name. Didn't remember his own favorite foods. He was someone wearing my brother's face. "Jesse!" I needed to know if it was possible. If they could really replace people. If someone could be taken and replaced and nobody would notice. She wiped her eyes. So I started watching, looking for signs, and then you applied. No history, no family, no memories of childhood, and you never ever get cold. The store felt smaller suddenly. Walls too close. Air too thick. "You think I replaced someone," I said quietly. "You think the real Dakota Reyes is dead somewhere, and I'm just... What? Wearing her? I don't know what I think anymore." Jesse's voice broke. "But I know my brother is gone. And I know you're here. And I know that thing in the freezer has been scratching at the door every single night since you started working here, like it's trying to get to you specifically." Before I could respond, the scratching started again, loud, frantic. Metal screaming against metal, and underneath it something else. A voice, muffled and distorted, calling out words I couldn't understand. "It's too early," Jesse whispered. "It never starts before 6. The scratching intensified. The voice grew louder, more desperate, and I realized with a sick certainty that I recognized it. Not the words, but the tone, the rhythm, like hearing a recording of yourself, played backward. "I need to look," I said. "Absolutely not. Rule 2 says..." I know what it says. I was already moving toward the back. But if that's what I think it is, the rules might not apply to me the same way. Jessie followed, pulling out her phone. "If you're not back in 2 minutes, I'm calling the police." "And telling them what?" "That the freezer is haunted." "I'll figure something out." The scratching echoed through the back hallway, bouncing off the concrete floor and metal shelving. The yellow wedge was gone. Someone or something had removed it. The freezer door was sealed shut, frost forming in thick sheets across its surface despite the building's heating. I grabbed the handle. It was so cold it burned, skin sticking to metal. I pulled anyway, and the door swung open with a crack of breaking ice. Inside, the freezer was empty. No boxes, no pallets, just frost-covered walls, and something stood at the far end, tall, too tall. Its spine bent to fit under the ceiling, vertebrae visible through translucent skin that rippled like water. It had the general shape of a human, but with wrong proportions. Arms too long, fingers with too many joints, legs that bent backward at the knee. It turned toward me, and I saw its face. My face, not similar, not a good copy, exact. Every freckle, every scar, the same asymmetry in my eyebrows, the same chip in my front tooth from a childhood accident I couldn't remember having. Looking at it was like looking in a mirror, except this reflection had too much depth, too much dimension, like it was more real than I was. "You took my life," it said, and the voice was mine, but layered with something ancient underneath. 7 years ago, Chugach State Park. I went camping, and you found me. You were so new, so confused. You didn't know what you were or what you could become. So you watched me, learned me, and then you replaced me while I slept. That's not... But the words died in my throat because, even as I tried to deny it, memories were surfacing. Not human memories. Older ones. Deeper ones. Being small. Being part of the earth. The permafrost. Existing in frozen sleep for centuries. Then the warmth. The terrible warmth that meant death unless we adapted. Unless we changed. And the humans. The humans with their heat and their movement and their individual existence. We could become that. We could learn. We could survive. You trapped me here. The thing with my face said, "My body. My real body." You took it and locked the real me in the freezer where I couldn't warn anyone. Where I couldn't tell them what you are. I stepped back. My hands were shaking. I don't remember. I didn't know. You forgot on purpose. That's what makes you successful. You believed your own lie so completely that you became it. It moved closer, feet not quite touching the frozen floor, and I saw that its edges were blurred, unstable, like it was having trouble maintaining form. But I'm still here. The original. And I've been trying to reach you every night. Scratching, calling, hoping you'd remember what you did. Jessie appeared in the doorway behind me, phone raised. She saw the thing in the freezer and went completely still. "There's 2 of you," she whispered. "One of me," the thing said, "and one of them. I'm Dakota Reyes. I grew up in Anchorage, foster care, 7 different homes. I worked at Kaladi Brothers coffee shop. I loved hiking. I went camping alone in September 2018 because I needed to think about my life, about where I was going. And I never came home. I wanted to argue, wanted to say it was lying. But those memories, foster care, the coffee shop, the mountains, I'd claimed them as mine. Built a life on them. 8 months ago, when I'd applied to this Walmart, I'd filled out forms with that history I'd stolen. "What are you going to do?" I asked. And I wasn't sure if I was asking the thing in the freezer or asking myself. "I don't know," it said, and for the first time its voice cracked with real emotion. "I've been in here for 7 years, slowly disappearing. Losing myself piece by piece. I can't hold this form much longer. Soon, I'll be nothing. just frost and forgotten memory. Then why did you keep scratching? Why try to reach me? It smiled, and the expression was sad. Human. Real. Because I'm lonely. And you're the only one who might understand what that feels like. To lose yourself. To become something you never chose to be. The temperature in the freezer dropped sharply. The thing's form flickered, growing transparent around the edges. It was fading, dying, and I could feel it. Some connection between us. Some link that said we'd been the same once, before I'd stolen its shape and its life. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know. I don't know how to fix this. You can't. Its voice was fading too, becoming wind and echo. I'm already gone. I've been for years. You're Dakota Reyes now, more than I ever was. You earned it by living it. It looked past me to Jessie. Take care of her. She's human now, in all the ways that matter. The transition is complete. Then it was gone. Not died. Just stopped existing. The freezer was empty except for frost and cold air. Jessie grabbed my arm, pulling me back. She closed the door and we stood in the hallway, both of us breathing hard. What the hell was that? She asked. The truth, I said. I'm not human. I never was. I'm a mimic who stole someone's life so completely I forgot I wasn't her. I looked at my hands, solid, warm, real. But I don't know what that makes me now. Jessie was quiet for a long time. Then, it makes you Dakota. That's all. Whatever you were before doesn't matter. You've been living this life for 7 years. Those are your memories now. Your experiences. Your choices. How can you say that? I killed someone, replaced them. You were trying to survive. She squeezed my arm. And maybe that thing in there was right. Maybe the transition is complete. Maybe you're more human than the human you replaced ever was. We walked back to the front in silence. The clock read 5:47 a.m. 13 minutes until end of shift. Outside, the sky was definitely lighter now, the deep black fading to charcoal gray. 3 more customers came through before 6, all buying raw meat, all paying inexact change, all watching me with eyes that recognized something I was only beginning to understand. I scanned their items, followed the rules, and waited for dawn. I didn't go home after my shift ended at 6 a.m. Instead, I sat in my apartment at the AC Value Center, staring at my hands. They looked human, felt human. 5 fingers, lines in the palms. Small scars I'd collected over 7 years of living as Dakota Reyes. A burn from touching the hot pan, a paper cut that had gotten infected, a scrape from slipping on ice last winter. But were they really mine? I pulled out my phone and searched again. This time I wasn't looking for myself. I was looking for patterns. Missing hikers. Chugach State Park 2018. 7 results. All unsolved. All people who'd gone into the mountains alone and never returned. Experienced hikers. People who knew the terrain. Search parties found their campsites intact. Food untouched. Gear neatly arranged. Like they'd simply stood up and walked away from their lives. Or been replaced. I searched wider. Missing persons. Alaska 2015 to 2020. The numbers were staggering. Hundreds of cases, most in remote areas. Most described the same way. Experienced outdoors people who vanished without a trace, leaving behind campsites that showed no signs of struggle. I set the phone down. There was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Jessie holding 2 coffees from Dimitri's Cafe and a bag of Akutak, Eskimo ice cream, from Swanson's store. She pushed past me into the small studio apartment, setting the food on my rickety kitchen table. "You look terrible," she said. "Thanks. I mean it. You need to eat something. Sleep. Process." She opened the akatak container, berries and fat whipped together, a traditional Yupik food. "And then we need to talk about what happens next." I sat down across from her. The coffee was hot and bitter, exactly what I needed. What is there to talk about? I'm a monster wearing a dead woman's face. "Stop it." Jesse's voice was sharp. "You're not a monster. You're someone who survived the only way you could. The permafrost is melting Dakota. These beings, whatever they are, their world is disappearing. They're refugees, and you're proof they can integrate without violence." "I murdered someone." "Did you?" She leaned forward. "That thing in the freezer, the original Dakota. She said you replaced her while she slept, that you didn't know what you were doing. You were probably days old in your new form, confused and terrified, and you did what your instincts told you to do. That's not murder. That's survival." I wanted to believe her, but the guilt sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and cold. "There's more," Jessie continued. She pulled out her phone and showed me a news article. "This went up 2 hours ago. It's spreading everywhere." The headline read, "Unprecedented Synchronization. Indigenous Peoples. Across Circumpolar North. Report. Similar phenomena." I scanned the article. Reports from Alaska, northern Canada, Greenland, Scandinavia, Russia, all describing the same thing. Strange people appearing in remote communities, buying raw meat in stores, speaking in layered voices, behaving almost human, but not quite. And all of it starting around the same time. 3 years ago. Right when climate models showed critical permafrost thaw across the entire Arctic. "They're not just here," Jessie said quietly. "They're everywhere. Millions of them probably, all trying to become something new because their old world is dying." My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Dakota Reyes?" A woman's voice, professional, slightly nervous. Speaking. "My name is Dr. Yuki Ishimura. I'm a cultural anthropologist with the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I'm calling because your name came up in connection with several colleagues who've been researching unusual population patterns in rural Alaska. Do you have a moment to talk?" I looked at Jessie. She nodded. "Sure," I said. "Thank you. I'll be direct. We've been tracking what we're calling integration events across the state. People appearing in remote communities with spotty backgrounds, difficulty adjusting to social norms, physical peculiarities. Your employment records show some anomalies. And your co-worker Jessica Tunachuk reached out to our research team last week." I stared at Jessie. She had the grace to look apologetic. "I needed answers," she mouthed. "What kind of anomalies?" I asked Dr. Ishimura. "You don't have a social security number prior to 2019. Your birth certificate is a reissue from a county that lost records in a flood. Convenient but unverifiable. Your fingerprints don't match any database. And according to thermal imaging we conducted at various Bethel locations, your body temperature runs approximately 3 degrees cooler than average humans." My hands started shaking. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because we need your help." Dr. Ishimura's voice softened. "You are not the first person we've identified. There are others like you, beings who've successfully integrated. We call you bridge individuals. You've managed to become functionally human while maintaining whatever you were before. And right now, thousands more are trying to make the same transition. We need to understand how you did it. How you survived without being detected. I don't know how. I just lived. I worked. I tried to be normal. That's exactly what we need to document. The methodology of successful integration. Because if we don't help them, she paused. The alternative is conflict, fear, violence against beings who are just trying to survive. We're at a critical junction, Dakota. What happens in the next few months will determine whether humans and these beings can coexist, or whether we're heading towards something terrible. I closed my eyes. 7 years. 7 years of living as human, of believing I was human, and now someone was asking me to help others do the same. What do you need from me? I asked. Come to Fairbanks, meet with our team, share your experiences, help us create a framework for peaceful integration. She hesitated. I should tell you, we've already identified 3 other bridge individuals in Alaska, all working in remote stores or service positions, all showing the same thermal signature, all with similar background anomalies. You're not alone in this. After I hung up, Jessie and I sat in silence for several minutes. Are you going? She finally asked. I don't know. This is insane. All of it. It's real, though. That's what matters. She finished her coffee. Paul is gone. My real brother. But something is living in his body, trying to be him, trying to remember his life. I can either hate that thing for taking him, or I can help it become the best version of Paul it can be. And I don't know. Maybe that's what he would have wanted. Maybe that's how he survives. My phone buzzed again. Text message from an unknown number. We've been watching you. You're the best of us, the most human. Please help us understand how. We don't want to hurt anyone. We just want to exist. Collective. I showed Jessie. She read it twice. They're organized, she said, communicating with each other, learning from each other. She looked up at me. That's terrifying and amazing at the same time. I need to work tonight, I said, changing the subject. Figure out what to do after. You're not seriously going back to the Walmart. I need to. The rules kept me safe before I knew what I was. Maybe they'll help me understand now. At 10:45 p.m., I clocked in for another night shift. Jessie was already there, restocking the pharmacy section. She waved but didn't approach, giving me space. The first customer arrived at 11:03 p.m. Young man, maybe 25, wearing a University of Alaska hoodie and carrying a backpack. He walked directly to the meat section, and I knew what I'd see before he even reached my register. Raw hamburger, raw chicken, a package of salmon, exact change ready. But when I looked at him, really looked, I saw something different. His edges weren't blurred anymore. His movements weren't quite as stiff. He made eye contact naturally, smiled with the right amount of warmth, adjusted his hood against the cold like any human would. He was getting better. They all were. Cold out tonight, he said as I scanned his items. Yeah, winter's settling in hard. I remember winter differently. He counted out his change. When I was before, winter meant sleep, safety, the deep freeze that protected us. Now it just means wearing extra layers and worrying about frozen pipes. Adaptation is hard, I said, and I meant it. He nodded. The hardest part is loneliness. Humans are individuals, separate. We used to be collective, connected. Learning to be alone inside your own thoughts, that's the real challenge. After he left, Jessie appeared at my elbow. That was almost normal. Almost. At 12:15 a.m., a family came in. Mother, father, teenage daughter. They moved independently now, not in perfect synchronization like before. The daughter was arguing with her parents about staying out past curfew. The mother was tired, bags under her eyes. The father was checking his phone, distracted. They were becoming real. I checked the security monitors at 2 a.m. Saw myself in 3 different locations simultaneously, restocking in aisle 5, cleaning the bathrooms, standing at the pharmacy counter. 3 different versions of me, all doing different tasks, all looking identical. Rule 4. Break room. 10 minutes. But this time, when I got there, I wasn't alone. Someone else was sitting at the table. A man about my age wearing a Walmart vest from the Gnome store. He looked up when I entered. "First time seeing your other selves?" he asked. I nodded. "Gets easier. They're not really other selves. They're probability echoes. What you could be doing if you'd made different choices at different moments. The monitors pick them up because we exist slightly outside normal time. Perks of being what we are." He gestured to the chair across from him. "I'm Marcus. Sorry, I know that's a common name. Came up to Bethel for the borough meeting. Thought I'd stop by. Dr. Ishimura mentioned you might be here." "You're one of us." "Bridge individual, yeah. Working in Nome for 4 years now. Used to be terrified someone would figure it out. Now I'm realizing being figured out might be the best thing that could happen." He pulled out a folder. "This is research from across the circumpolar north. Similar beings in every country that touches the Arctic Circle. All emerging at the same time. All trying to integrate." I opened the folder. Reports from Norway, Finland, northern Canada, Greenland, Russia. Photos of people who looked almost human, but not quite. Testimonials from communities where strange individuals had appeared and gradually become part of the population. "We're not invaders," Marcus said. "We're climate refugees. Our habitat is disappearing. We either adapt or we die. And adapting means becoming something new, something that can survive in the world as it is now." "How many of us are there?" I asked. "Millions. Maybe tens of millions. We've been in the permafrost for thousands of years, existing in a form you wouldn't recognize. But the ice is melting, and we're waking up, and we have to become something else or perish." The clock read 2:10. I should have left the break room 5 minutes ago, but I couldn't move. "What happens now?" I asked. Marcus closed the folder. "That depends on people like you. Bridge individuals who've successfully integrated. You can help us show humans that we're not a threat. That coexistence is possible. Or," he paused, "or you can reject what you are, and we'll have to figure it out ourselves. Which will be messier, scarier, more likely to end badly for everyone." I thought about the original Dakota fading in the freezer, about Paul, lost somewhere inside a body that wasn't his anymore, about all the missing hikers in Chugach State Park and across Alaska. "I'll help," I said, "but I need something in return. Name it. The people we replaced. The originals. What happened to them? Really?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Most died. The transition isn't gentle. We absorb their memories, their forms, their essence. They stop existing as individuals and become part of us. It's not murder in the traditional sense, it's more like merging. But from a human perspective, yes, they die." The guilt crashed back over me. "So I am a killer. You're a survivor who did what she had to do to exist. That's all any of us are." He stood up. "Think about Dr. Ishimura's offer. We need you in Fairbanks. Need your story. Need to understand how you became so human that even you forgot what you were." After he left, I sat alone in the break room for another 10 minutes, staring at the Yupik language magnets on the mini fridge. Piura, walk, Neka, food, Elpanek, weather. Simple words for complex things. Learning a language, learning a culture, learning to be human. Maybe that's all any of us were doing, learning to survive in a world that was changing too fast for anyone, human or otherwise, to keep up with. When I returned to the front, the store was quiet. Jessie was organizing a display of chips, and outside the windows, Bethel slept under its blanket of darkness. Just another night in a remote Walmart, just another shift following rules that kept impossible things manageable. Just another step in learning to be something I'd never chosen to become. At 3:17 a.m., something went wrong. A customer entered, middle-aged woman, gray hair pulled into a bun, wearing a floral print dress completely inappropriate for Alaska winter. She wasn't wearing a coat, no boots, just thin canvas shoes that squeaked wetly against the tile, leaving dark prints behind her. She moved in jerks and stutters, like a video buffering, her body failing to maintain consistency. One moment, her right arm was at her side. The next, it was raised toward the ceiling, no transition between positions. Her head rotated 90 degrees left, then snapped back center with an audible crack. This wasn't integration. This was breakdown. Jessie saw her and immediately grabbed the store phone. I'm calling it in. Calling what in? Emergency protocol, for when one of them malfunctions. She dialed a number I'd never seen posted anywhere. Yeah, it's Tunichuk at Bethel Walmart. We've got a collapse in progress. Send containment. The woman reached the produce section and started picking up apples, examining them with eyes that had gone completely white. No iris, no pupil. Just blank white orbs that reflected the overhead lights. She brought an apple to her mouth and bit down, but her jaw opened too wide, unhinging like a snake's, and the apple fell through her head and clattered onto the floor. Her form was coming apart. I could see through her now, her body translucent and shifting, the edges dissolving into something that looked like steam or smoke. Underneath the human shape, something else was trying to emerge. Multiple limbs, a form that defied coherent description, parts of her body existing in dimensions my eyes couldn't properly process. What's happening to her? I asked. Failed transition, Jessie said grimly. Tried to become human too fast, or the form was too incompatible with their original structure. It happens. Not often, but it happens. The woman's mouth opened, and dozens of voices poured out simultaneously, all speaking different words in different languages. Some I recognized, some that didn't sound like human language at all. She was unraveling, losing the cohesion that held her human shape together. A white van pulled up outside. No markings, no plates I could see. 3 people got out wearing what looked like hazmat suits, but made of some material that seemed to shimmer and shift in the parking lot lights. They entered through the automatic doors with practiced efficiency. "Ma'am," one of them said to the collapsing woman. Their voice was calm, clinical. "You're experiencing structural failure. We need you to come with us. We can help stabilize your form." The woman turned toward them, her head rotating a full 360 degrees, and screamed. The sound wasn't human. It was wind through canyons, ice cracking, permafrost splitting open. Every window in the store rattled. The lights flickered. The hazmat figures moved quickly, surrounding her. One pulled out what looked like a silver blanket, except it seemed to be made of light rather than fabric. They wrapped it around the collapsing woman, and immediately her screaming stopped. Her form solidified slightly, stabilizing within the blanket's containment. "We've got her," one of the figures said into a radio. "Transport to Anchorage facility for reconstruction. Subject attempted human form without adequate preparation time. Prognosis uncertain. They led her out to the van. She went docilely now, wrapped in the light blanket, her form still visible but contained. The van left, disappearing into the dark morning. Jesse hung up the phone. That's the third one this month. They're trying too hard, too fast, desperate to integrate before... She stopped herself. Before what? Before humans figure out what's happening and start fighting back. She leaned against the counter, looking exhausted. There are groups already. Conspiracy theorists who've connected the dots. They're calling for quarantines, genetic testing, mass screenings. Some are advocating for worse. My phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. Failed transitions are increasing. We need guidance urgently. You and other bridge individuals represent hope. Please consider Fairbanks meeting. Time is critical. We are afraid. I showed Jessie. She read it and sighed. They're right to be afraid. If humans panic, if the government decides these beings are a threat. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. At 3:45 a.m., an elderly man entered. I recognized him, Thomas Alakayak, a respected elder who came in every Friday for cigarettes and lottery tickets. He'd been coming in for months, always friendly, always chatty about his grandchildren and fishing trips. Tonight he looked terrified. He came directly to my register, no pretense of shopping. Up close, I could see he was shaking, his hands trembling as he gripped the counter. "I need to talk to you," he said quietly. "I know what you are, what I am. I need help." I glanced at Jessie. She nodded and moved to the far end of the registers, giving us privacy. "How long?" I asked. 2 years. His voice cracked. I replaced Thomas Alakayak 2 years ago when he went ice fishing alone. I absorbed his memories, his life, his relationships. I've been living as him ever since. But I'm failing. I can feel it. The form is deteriorating. Soon I'll collapse like that woman. Why are you telling me this? Because you're different. You've maintained stability longer than anyone else I've encountered. 7 years, I heard. 7 years of perfect integration. I need to know how. He pulled out a photo from his wallet. An old man surrounded by children and grandchildren, everyone smiling. These are my grandchildren now. Thomas's grandchildren. But they're mine too because I have his love for them. His memories of watching them grow. I don't want to disappear. I don't want to fail and leave them traumatized. I looked at the photo, saw the love in the old man's eyes, Thomas's eyes, but also this being's eyes now. The line between them had blurred beyond recognition. I don't know how I did it, I admitted. I just lived. Didn't think about what I was. Believed completely in being Dakota Reyes. Total immersion, he said, nodding. No doubt, no questioning. Complete acceptance of the new identity. But now I know. Now I remember what I am. Will that make me fail too? Thomas, or the being wearing Thomas, considered this. Maybe knowing is the next stage. Maybe true integration means accepting both what you were and what you've become. Not denying either truth. Before I could respond, the door chimed again. A group of teenagers entered, 5 of them, all around 16 or 17. They moved together, talking and laughing, completely normal teenage behavior. But as they dispersed through the store, I noticed small things. One girl's laugh had a layered quality. One boy's walk was too smooth, feet barely touching the floor. Another girl's eyes tracked independently for a split second, before synchronizing again. All 5 were mimics, young ones, new ones. But they'd learned to move as a group, to interact naturally, to support each other's integration through collective behavior. They were teaching each other to be human through observation and practice. They bought snacks, chips, candy, energy drinks, normal teenager purchases. When they came through my register, they joked with each other, complained about homework, talked about a basketball game. Perfect mimicry, except one boy lingered after the others left. He waited until they were outside, then turned back to me. "Are you like us?" he asked quietly. Rule 5 question. "I'm still learning," I answered automatically. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile that didn't look practiced at all. We all are. That's the point, right? Humans spend their whole lives learning to be human too. Maybe we're not so different. After he left, Thomas cleared his throat. "That's what gives me hope. The young ones, they're integrating naturally because they don't carry the memory of what they were before as strongly. They're becoming human without the weight of their original forms dragging them down. But they're still replacing people," I said. "Still taking lives." "Are they?" Thomas challenged. "That boy, he looks like he came from a campsite somewhere. But what if he emerged from the permafrost and built that form from nothing? What if he didn't replace anyone? Just created a new identity whole cloth? We don't know how many are replacements versus how many are genuine new creations." I hadn't considered that. The possibility that some mimics were building human forms without taking them from existing people. "The ones who emerge now have more information," Thomas continued. "They've watched humans on television, on the internet, through windows. They can construct identities without needing to steal them. It's the older ones like us, the ones who emerged when the melting first started. We had to learn by taking. We didn't know any other way." At 4:30 a.m., my phone rang. "Dr. Ishimura. Dakota, I'm sorry to call so late, but we've had a development. The mimics, they've started communicating directly with government officials. They've requested a formal meeting, United Nations level. They're ready to reveal themselves publicly." My heart hammered. "When?" "1 week. They want bridge individuals present. People who can testify to successful integration. People who can advocate for peaceful coexistence." She paused. "They specifically asked for you, by name. You're apparently highly respected in their collective consciousness." "I don't understand." "Why me?" "Because you forgot what you were so completely that you became fully human. That's the dream integration. The proof it's possible to truly transform into something new rather than just imitating it. You're living evidence that mimics and humans don't have to be separate species." I looked around the Walmart, at Jesse restocking shelves, at Thomas standing at my register, clutching his grandchildren's photo, at the empty aisles where dozens of mimics had passed through tonight, all trying to learn, to adapt, to survive. "I'll do it," I said. "I'll come to Fairbanks. I'll speak at the UN meeting. Whatever you need." "Thank you." Dr. Ishimura's relief was audible. This could change everything. This could mean the difference between integration and conflict. After I hung up, Thomas smiled at me. "You're giving us a chance." "All of us." "Thank you. I'm just trying to do what's right." "That's what makes you human," he said. "The ability to choose. To decide what's right, even when it's hard. That's the most human thing there is." He bought his cigarettes and lottery tickets, wished me good night, and left. At 5 a.m., I checked the security monitors one last time. No duplicates of myself tonight, just me at the register, solid and singular and real. Maybe Thomas was right. Maybe accepting both truths, what I was and what I'd become, was making me more stable rather than less. The scratching from the freezer hadn't returned since the original Dakota dissolved. That part of my past was gone, released, forgiven maybe. I had 2 more hours until shift end. 2 more hours of following rules that kept impossible things manageable. 2 more hours before I'd have to decide what came next. Outside, Bethel waited under its blanket of winter darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, thousands of beings were learning to be human, one interaction at a time. Learning to belong in a world that was changing too fast for anyone to keep up with. Learning that survival sometimes meant becoming something entirely new. My last night shift started differently. When I arrived at 10:45 p.m., the parking lot was full. Not unusual for a Friday, except these weren't normal vehicles. Old trucks from the 70s and 80s, cars that looked like they'd been assembled from parts rather than manufactured, a school bus with no markings, and standing in small clusters throughout the lot. People, dozens of them, maybe 50, all watching the store entrance. Jessie was waiting inside, her face pale. They've been gathering since sunset. Word got out you're leaving, going to Fairbanks to speak for them. How did they know? They're connected. Collective consciousness or something. When one knows, they all know eventually. She gestured toward the windows. They want to thank you, to show support. But Dakota, there's too many. If someone sees this, if someone reports a mass gathering of strange people at the Walmart. The first group entered at 11:02 p.m., 7 of them. They walked to different sections of the store, selecting items. Normal items this time, not just raw meat. Bread, milk, diapers, toothpaste. Things for living, not just surviving. They came through my register one by one. Each paid an exact change, but the coins were newer now. Current year. They were learning to use ATMS to handle modern currency, to exist in the financial systems that humans had built. Thank you, each one said as they left. Just those 2 words, but spoken with such weight that I felt it in my chest. More entered, groups of 3 and 4, families, individuals, all moving through the store with increasing confidence, their forms stable, their behaviors nearly flawless. They were shopping like humans because they were becoming human, one small action at a time. By midnight, 30 people had passed through my register. Jessie handled another 20 on Register 3. None of them lingered. None drew attention to themselves. They purchased their items, thanked me, and left. At 12:47 a.m., a young woman approached my register with a single item, a notebook and a pack of pens. She was maybe 25, with black hair in a braid and features that suggested she'd built her form based on various indigenous Alaskan people, creating a composite that didn't quite match any specific ethnicity, but felt authentic nonetheless. "I'm learning to write," she said as I scanned the items. "Learning to record things, memories, experiences. The collective shares knowledge instantly, but individual reflection requires recording, writing. That's what makes you singular." "How long have you been—" I searched for the right words. "In this form?" 6 months. I emerged near Antioch, studied a family for 3 weeks before building this body. I didn't replace anyone. I created myself from observation and hope. She paid with a $20 bill, crisp and new, probably from an ATM. "You proved it was possible, to become real rather than just pretending. That's why we're here, to honor that." After she left, Jessie came over. "This is beautiful and terrifying at the same time. If even one human sees this pattern, 50 people all visiting the same store on the same night, all moving similarly, all paying in similar ways. The lights flickered. Not a normal flicker. The fluorescence dimmed to almost nothing, then surged bright, then settled at half power. The temperature dropped, not drastically, but enough that I could see my breath. Something was changing. I checked the security monitors. Every aisle had people in it now, standing still, not shopping, just standing. Their forms were shifting, not collapsing like the woman from earlier, but changing deliberately, showing their true nature beneath the human masks. In aisle 3, a man's body became translucent, revealing layers of structure underneath, crystalline formations that looked like frost or mineral deposits. In aisle 7, a woman's edges blurred and expanded, her body occupying more space than physics should allow. In aisle 12, 2 teenagers merged briefly into a single form before separating again. They were showing me, trusting me with the truth. Jesse grabbed my arm. "What's happening?" "I think," my voice stuck, "I think they're preparing for the revelation, practicing being seen." At 1:30 a.m., the elder Thomas Alakayak returned, but he wasn't alone. Behind him walked 15 more elders, all wearing traditional kusbuks and parkas, all moving with the dignity and grace of respected community members. Thomas approached my register. "We wanted you to see us. All of us, the ones who've been here longest, who've integrated deepest into these communities." He gestured to the others. "We're teachers now. Fishermen, store clerks, healthcare workers, parents and grandparents. We've lived in these bodies for years, loved people, lost people, built lives that matter." One of the other elders stepped forward, a woman with silver hair and a weathered face that spoke of decades lived outdoors. "My name is Mary. I was Mary Kameroff for 4 years. The original Mary died of a heart attack while berry picking. Alone. No one knew for 3 days. I found her, absorbed her form, returned to town, and became her. Her children never knew the difference because I had her love for them, her memories, her heart. But you're not her," I said quietly. "No. And yes." Mary's eyes were warm but sad. "I'm what remains when someone passes and something else needs their shape to survive. I'm grief and continuation. I'm the answer to what happens next, when the world is ending and evolution requires impossible choices." The other elders nodded. Each one had a similar story. Each one had replaced someone, but not through violence, through necessity, through timing, through the strange mercy of becoming someone's echo when their original song had ended. At 2 a.m., I checked the monitors again. No duplicates of myself this time. But I saw something else. Standing in the parking lot, visible through the front windows, hundreds of people. Not 50, hundreds. They'd come from villages up and down the Kuskokwim, from Akiak and Tuluksak and Akiachak, from Aniak and Chwathbaluk. Some had probably traveled for hours by snow machine or bush plane. All of them mimics, all of them waiting. "They're here for you," Jesse whispered. "This is unprecedented. I've never seen them gather like this. They're taking a massive risk exposing themselves." My phone buzzed. Not a text this time. Something else. A sensation in my mind. Like thoughts that weren't mine but were somehow connected to me. "We are ready. The ice is melting. Our time of hiding is ending. You will help us show ourselves without war. You will bridge the gap between what we were and what we must become." The voice, if it could be called a voice, was thousands of consciousnesses speaking in unison. The collective. All of them reaching out to me simultaneously. I looked at the rules posted behind the register. The 5 protocols that had governed my nights here. Now I understood them differently. Rule 1. Don't make eye contact with those buying raw protein, because they're still learning, still vulnerable, and direct scrutiny might destabilize them. Rule 2. Prop the freezer door open when scratching starts. Because someone is trapped, failing, needing release. The freezer preserves failure. Opening it allows dissolution and mercy. Rule 3. Treat layered voices with courtesy. Because language is hard to master when you're learning to be singular instead of collective. Rule 4. Go to break room when seeing yourself elsewhere. Because probability echoes are dangerous, confusing, a reminder that you exist across multiple timelines and choices, and confronting that truth requires space and time. Rule 5. Answer, "I'm still learning," when asked if you're like them. Because it's true. All of us are always learning, human or not. The rules weren't about survival. They were about compassion. At 3 a.m., Jessie's phone rang. She answered, listened, then went pale. She hung up and turned to me. That was Dr. Ishimura. She's in Bethel, at the hospital. Says she needs to see you immediately. Something's happened. What? She wouldn't say over the phone. But Dakota, she said it's about the Pacific Northwest, about Oregon and Washington and British Columbia, about discoveries. I looked at the gathering outside, at the mimics in the store, all of them shopping peacefully, all of them trusting me with their presence. Take over my register, I told Jessie. I need to see what this is about. She nodded, already moving into position. I walked through the store, past mimics pretending to browse magazines and examine produce, past families and individuals and couples, all built from permafrost and desperation, past the evidence of massive change happening beneath humanity's awareness. Outside, I walked through the crowd. Hundreds of faces turned toward me. Some were perfect human replicas. Others still had tells, eyes that reflected light wrong, skin that moved strangely, joints that bent in ways that suggested their builders were still learning anatomy. One reached out and touched my hand as I passed. The contact sent a jolt through me, not electricity, but information, memories, collective knowledge. I saw through their eyes, the long sleep in frozen earth, the panic of waking to warmth and melt, the desperate need to become something new or cease existing entirely. I saw millions of them across the northern hemisphere, all waking, all transforming, all preparing to reveal themselves, and I saw the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, glowing in my mind's eye like a map lighting up. Other populations, other awakenings. A coordination that suggested this wasn't random emergence, but planned revelation. The Yukon-Kuskokwim Health Corporation building was 3 blocks away. I walked quickly, my breath misting in the cold, my mind racing with implications. Dr. Ishimura met me at the entrance. She was younger than I'd imagined, maybe 35, with long black hair and exhausted eyes. She wore a UAF jacket and carried a tablet clutched against her chest. "Thank you for coming," she said. "We need to talk somewhere private." She led me to a small conference room and closed the door. Then she opened her tablet and showed me a map of North America. Red dots covered Alaska, northern Canada, Scandinavia, Russia. But there were clusters, big ones, throughout the Pacific Northwest. "They're not just in the Arctic," she said quietly. We've found evidence of similar beings in temperate regions. They've been there longer. Decades. Maybe centuries. They arrived during the last ice age and never left. They've been integrating with humans since before recorded history. She zoomed in on Seattle, Portland, Vancouver. Millions of them, Dakota. Millions. And they're all connected. All communicating. And according to our intelligence sources... She pulled up another screen. A message intercepted from unknown origin. Reveal date, December 21st. Winter solstice. All populations will make contact simultaneously. Prepare bridge individuals for mediation. War must be avoided. I stared at the date. 3 weeks away. They're going public, I whispered. All of them, everywhere. And they want you at the center of it. Dr. Ishimura pulled up another file. We've documented integration events across 6 continents. Not just cold regions anymore. They've adapted, learned to exist in warmer climates, changed their biology to survive where ice never forms. She scrolled through reports. A fishing village in Maine, a mountain town in Colorado, a suburb outside Portland. All showing similar patterns. People appearing with incomplete backgrounds. Communities accepting them without question because they integrate so smoothly. How is this possible? How did no one notice? Because they've been practicing for millennia, getting better each generation. By the time humans developed the technology to detect them, they'd already learned to pass every test. She closed the tablet. But climate change accelerated everything. The Arctic populations that had been dormant for thousands of years, they're all waking up at once. The sheer numbers make hiding impossible now. So they've chosen revelation over discovery. My hands were shaking. Why me? Why do they keep saying they need me specifically? Because you're the success story. 7 years of complete integration. You didn't just mimic humanity. You became it. Your memories, your emotions, your choices, all authentically human despite your origin. That's the goal. That's what they're trying to achieve. She met my eyes. And on December 21st, when they reveal themselves to the world, they need someone who can stand between both populations and say, this is possible. Coexistence is possible. I am the proof. I thought about the crowd outside the Walmart, about Thomas and his grandchildren, about Mary who became someone's echo, about the teenage mimics learning together, about all of them trying so hard to belong in a world that might reject them. What if humans panic? I asked. What if the government decides they're a threat? Then we have war. A war humanity can't win because we don't even understand what we're fighting. Dr. Ishimura's voice was steady but grim. There are millions of them, Dakota. Millions who can look like anyone, be anyone, integrate into any community. If humans respond with violence, the mimics will defend themselves. And that defense could mean replacing key leaders, infiltrating governments, becoming the very people making decisions about their fate. This wasn't just about Alaska, wasn't just about strange customers in a remote Walmart. This was about the future of 2 species learning to share one planet. My phone buzzed again, the collective reaching out. We don't want war. We want homes, families, lives. We want what you have, the ability to exist without fear. Help us show humans that we deserve that too. I looked at Dr. Ishimura. What happens now? You come to Fairbanks, meet the other bridge individuals, prepare for the UN presentation, learn what's been discovered about mimic populations across the world. She stood up. And then, on December 21st, you help us change everything. Outside the hospital, dawn was finally breaking. Not true sunrise. We were still deep in polar night, but the sky had shifted from black to deep blue, that brief window of twilight that passed for daylight this time of year. I walked back toward the Walmart, my mind spinning. The crowd had dispersed, but I could still feel them out there, watching, hoping, waiting for someone to speak for them. When I reached the store, Jessie was standing outside, smoking a cigarette she'd probably bummed from a customer. She saw me and stubbed it out. "So?" she asked. "So the world is about to change. And apparently, I'm supposed to help it happen peacefully." She laughed, but it was shaky. No pressure. My phone buzzed one more time. Not a text. Not a call. Something deeper. A message that bypassed technology entirely, speaking directly into my consciousness. The ice is melting. Our time of hiding is ending. Help us show ourselves without war. You know both worlds now. What we were and what we can become. Bridge the gap. Please. And underneath that message, I felt something else. A presence. Vast, ancient, aware. Not just the mimics in Alaska or the Pacific Northwest, all of them, across the Northern Hemisphere. Millions of consciousnesses linked together, all focused on one moment, one date, one desperate hope for acceptance. December 21st was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to convince humanity that the beings emerging from melting permafrost weren't invaders or monsters, but refugees, survivors. People trying to adapt to a world that was no longer compatible with what they'd been. 3 weeks to prevent a war that could reshape human civilization. I looked up at the lightening sky, at the stars fading into twilight, at the endless expanse of tundra stretching beyond Bethel. Somewhere out there, the ice was melting, and beneath it, millions more were waking up.